Hello, everyone. I've got one of my regular catch-ups with Kate Coleman of Keep Prisons Single Sex. Obviously, last week was a very disappointing week. Let's just immediately go to Kate and we'll find out why. Hiya, Kate.
Hello.
Lovely to see you, even in these terrible circumstances. Can you tell people what exactly happened last week that was so devastating for women in prison?
Right. So I'll just give a quick bit of background as to the judicial review itself.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of March, over the 2nd and the 3rd of March in the High Court, a judicial review was brought by a female prisoner going by the initials FDJ. And she claimed that she'd been sexually assaulted by a prisoner of the male sex, identifying as transgender, who had a gender recognition certificate. This male prisoner, had been convicted of very serious sexual offences against women, and he was being held in the general population of the female estate with her. So clearly a very traumatic and dreadful thing that happened to her. And I think I'll just put this like front and foremost at the beginning. I think in a lot of the discussion about this, it's quite easy to lose sight of the fact that this is one brave female prisoner who has brought this case and who has had the tenacity and the strength to stick with it throughout the entire legal process. So I say to her, thank you, bravo, you're a complete shero, hats off to you. So what she did, the claimant, she brought a judicial review challenging the lawfulness of the two policies that the Ministry of Justice has in place regarding the allocation of prisoners who identify as transgender within the prison estate.
Yeah.
Her challenge was twofold. It was firstly that they misstate the law, and secondly that they unlawfully discriminate against women. I'm not a lawyer, but just briefly, the laws that she was citing in this were firstly the separate sex and single sex exceptions within the Equality Act, and secondly Articles 3, 8 and 14 of the Human Rights Act. So Article 3 is about the right to not be subjected to inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. Article 8 is to do with the right to respect for private and family life. And Article 14 is to do with non-discrimination. So that was the case that was brought at the beginning of March. And we did a bit of a review of that a few days after, didn't we?
Yes.
Maybe we can link to that in the description box. And if people want to kind of like have a look about the arguments that were advanced both by the claimant and the defence. Yeah. So we can keep this a bit briefer. So we were waiting and waiting and waiting.
Yes, because it was delayed.
It was quite lengthy. You know, I mean, you know, going by previous ones, it did take a bit longer than anticipated. But Friday last week, we finally got judgment handed down. And yes, very disappointingly indeed, the judges ruled in favour of the Secretary of State for Justice, so against the claimant, and found that the policies are capable of being operated lawfully. So the claim failed.
Right, right. So this is a woman who is sexually attacked by a man in a place where she should have been completely surrounded by only prisoners of her own sex. And the judge found that nothing untoward had happened.
I mean, I think what we've got to be clear about is what was being decided and what wasn't.
Yes, it was the legal aspect, wasn't it? It was whether, yeah.
The judges made quite clear in their judgment that they had been called upon to decide as to the lawfulness of the policies, not their desirability, not whether the Ministry of Justice could have chosen to do anything different, and not the operation of the policies in any particular case.
Right, so it's just a kind of a sweeping...
It's a sweeping are these policies, or are they not, capable of being operated lawfully? Not
Right.
whether they're desirable, and not whether in any particular set of circumstances they failed the test of lawfulness because they were not complied with, or they did not operate correctly in that particular set of circumstances. And I think that even though, I mean, look, I think we all knew that this wasn't going to be a complete win. It couldn't be a complete win. This is the first time that a female prisoner has brought a case challenging or the lawfulness or the practice of housing prisoners of the male sex in the female prison population. It's also, as far as I'm aware, the first time that the single sex exceptions in operation, although not in a particular set of circumstances, but as they have been interpreted in policy, it's the first time that those have come to court as well. So this wasn't ever going to be a complete win, and it wasn't going to be an easy win. I did hope we would be somewhere more in the middle than we actually are. But nevertheless, I think there are good things that have come out of this. Firstly,
I heard that from another commentator, that there were a couple of things the judges said that actually gave, I don't know, that actually threw it on a little bit of a different light. Sorry to interrupt. Can you take us through that?
No, it's fine. Yeah, sure. So I think the first thing to hang on to, and I think this indicates where we go from here, is that this was a judgment about the lawfulness of the policy, not the desirability of the policy. And in fact, the judges said, and I'll quote here, "I fully understand the concerns advanced on behalf of the claimant. Many people may think it incongruous and inappropriate that a prisoner of masculine physique and with male genitalia should be accommodated in a female prison in any circumstances." And I think that is...
But do you think that speaks to his feeling?
Strong statement.
Right, okay.
I think that's a strong statement, and I think it's a significant statement. I'm not going to presume to draw any conclusions about what was in the judge's mind at the time of writing that, because as far be it from me to do that. But nevertheless, I think to have that statement on record is significant. And I think this is one of the ways that this diverges from other cases, because although this is the first case that has been brought by a woman, this is not the first case that has been brought in respect of the allocation of prisoners of the male sex to the female prison estate. There have been other cases that have been brought by male prisoners who've sought to be transferred to the female prison estate. So in a way, this also needs to be seen within the context of those. So previously, it's been very much focused on the desires of these men and how these have been translated into rights. And, you know, I mean, I've quoted this before, but I think it really can never be quoted enough, to be honest. There was part of the witness statement from Dr. James Barrett of the Gender Identity Clinic in respect of one of these cases from 2009. And he said, in regard to a prisoner of the male sex being transferred to the female prison estate, "I think that such acceptance will pretty generally apply in the women's prison, although there will probably always be a small number of prisoners who will choose to make an issue of the matter because they are the sort of women who enjoy conflict." So we go from that, which is horrifying,
extraordinary thing,
to last week's judgment, where the concerns advanced upon behalf of the claimant were understood, and the judges expressly said that they acknowledge the fear and anxiety that women may suffer if they're required to share prison accommodation with any male prisoner, not just one who's been convicted of sexual or violent offences against women. And I think that is a marked shift.
Good.
Clearly, it's not enough of a shift,
No.
Because then they go on to say, be that as it may, these subjective concerns of women are not sufficient to outweigh what they perceive to be the rights of this group of male prisoners to be accommodated in the female estate. But I think there is that. I know. I know. I mean, you know, as we said before we went on camera, you know, we're both just angry all the time, every day.
I mean, it's like,
be that as it may,
it's like we fell asleep for 1,000 years. You
yeah.
know, I mean, it makes no sense on no level. It's so casually, it's so casually careless of women's safety. I just can't get over it. I cannot get over it. You know, especially since, as you said in a recent, as you said in our previous discussion, you told me that a huge percentage of women who are in there for not paying their TV license, huge percentage are in there of the women who are in there have blunt force trauma to their heads, which usually came from a partner. You know, these are some of the most vulnerable women in the UK, and they're being placed with men. It's outrageous.
I think the element of choice here and lack of choice is also really quite stark, because what the prison service is doing is saying to a subgroup of male prisoners, yes, you can choose which prison estate you go to.
Yeah.
But the women have no choice at all in the matter.
Yes.
So there's a complete imbalance there, you know, and prisoners don't have a choice in which prison estate they are housed in. And I'm not, you know, for 1 minute suggesting that women in prison should be able to, you know, write down the list of, oh, these are my requirements and my preferences, not for 1 second, but it's got to be consistent.
It certainly does. It's got to be. If you let men do it, you know, you got to stop. So basically, men can do this at the moment. Women can't, and no woman would want to be placed in the male estate anyway.
Well, that's another thing. We know that women who identify as men are not housed in the male estate.
No, of course not.
Because suddenly biology matters. Suddenly biology is real, and suddenly that becomes the hard line in terms of risk assessment and safeguarding, as it should be.
Yes.
Just one other good thing that came out of the judgment before we get on to other discussion. As we discussed in the previous show that we did just after the hearing back in March, the judges were incredulous that data on GRC holders were not collected nor reported by the Ministry of Justice. And Sarah Hannett, barrister for the defence, said that the MOJ didn't do that because they believed that to do so could be a criminal act. And the judges just said, well, that's very nice, but, you know, cough up the data. So what has happened subsequent to that? We put in a parliamentary question, which Andrew Rosendale very kindly asked. And as a result of that question, we got an answer back from Alex Chalk saying that as of this year, 2021, data on GRC holders will be collected and reported by the MOJ. And that is also highly significant because this will mean, hopefully, the data will be presented in a, you know, meaningful and useful way. But this should mean that for the first time, we will be able to state exactly how many males are being held in the female prison estate. Because as we've discussed before, the GRC holders have only ever been recorded as female and women, and this means that they're very successfully hidden within the male prison estate.
Yes.
So
this is something of a theme.
Another change. You know, it's small, but you know, I'll take it.
Oh, sorry, someone is actually phoning me, so that's going to be a cut that we're going to have to do. Sorry, hold on a second. This seems to be quite a theme in this kind of fight. I also noticed that the shock of judges during the Keira Bell case, that data has not been collected by the Tavistock, and it seems like anywhere where this ideology is taking hold, it's very important that people don't actually know the details of what's going on.
Well, absolutely. I mean, this is another thing, and I don't know whether the GRC data that's going to be collected will trickle down to incident reporting. That's another PQ that we've got to get asked. But certainly thus far, any incident in the female prison estate that has involved a GRC holder, that GRC holder's involvement is recorded as that of a woman. So the sexual assault that happened to the female prisoner FDJ, that would have been recorded as an assault by a woman. So again, it is hidden.
Yeah,
it's hidden. And it even trickles down to risk assessment. There's the risk assessment tool, which is the OASIS sexual reoffender prediction tool, is used for adult males who have a history of sexual offending. It's designed for use with them, and it's only used for them. So what that means is that where you've got a male with the GRC, that tool cannot be used for him because he is a woman and is female, and this tool is not validated for use with women, females. So you can have somebody, this prisoner who sexually assaulted FDJ, convicted of very serious sexual offences against women. The day before the GRC was granted, this risk assessment tool, the OSP, would have been used. Then it comes in the post, and then from that point and ever onwards, that risk assessment tool cannot be used. The score disappears from the screen and it cannot be used. And I find that extraordinary because, we're consistently told, and this is the standard line which keeps coming back from the MOJ. We risk assess. We risk assess everybody very carefully in order to keep women in prison safe. Risk assessment. Well, how can you? You've just set yourselves up. You've set your systems up such that risk assessment is going to be inadequate. And the judgment, it was, part of the conclusion that these policies are capable of being applied lawfully, are capable of operating lawfully, is that all the risk assessment procedures and processes stipulated within them are adequate to the job. They're not.
Right. So that's where people can, that's the next step, I guess.
Well, I mean, I think the next step is to take it to Parliament. If it is.
How does one do that? You know about these things.
Well,
I have no idea.
Well, I mean, we've got a group of committed and active MPs and peers. We emailed them with a total of 30 parliamentary questions to ask across both houses. So that's underway. And then there'll be more questions coming out of it once we've got the answers. What people can really do is to write to their MPs. Okay. Write to your MP. Say that you're not happy about this. Say that, this is a travesty. I mean, if it is lawful for a male prisoner convicted of rape to be housed alongside female offenders who are the victims of sexual assault, that cannot be correct. The law cannot be correct.
Yeah. And we've kind of, and as we spoke about the last time we spoke, we've kind of sleepwalked into this situation, haven't we? And also, as we often find, another thing we often find with gender ideology taking hold of places, it's all happened very quietly. It's all happened in such a way that the public just don't know about it. Absolutely. Yeah. Like you said, I remember at one point you said it was a deliberate thing that prisons were targeted.
That was in Scotland. Yes, was in Scotland. They deliberately targeted prisons
because they felt that would open they felt.
Who cares about prisoners? Who cares about women in prison? Right? It's an easy win.
I hope
Very
people really take that in, though, because, you know, I mean, they basically did it to prisoners because they thought no one would care. And they thought they could do that so that once it's in place with prisoners, then they could say to the rest of society, oh, look, we've been doing it with prisoners. And
Oh, look, it works. I think another thing to
so
note
disgusting.
in respect of Scotland is that when they shoehorned it in, they did so during the time when everybody was busy with the Scottish referendum.
Oh, really? Right.
So everybody's busy with something else. So you can just get that.
Again,
pass. It's the Denton's playbook.
It's the Denton's playbook again. Yeah. I mean, you know, Irish women, thankfully, are waking up now to the fact that self-ID passed at the same time as marriage equality. And everyone was delighted about marriage equality, and they didn't realize that their rights had been fundamentally altered. You know, it's extraordinary. Can I just ask? This is slightly lighter note before we move on to other things we can do. But have you seen the Hollyoaks episode? Have you heard about it?
Oh no, I've watched the 3-minute 30-second clip.
Let me explain to people.
Apart from the acting, which God bless them, is dire.
Oh well,
it's wholly unrepresentative.
Well, that's
actually happens.
Exactly. It's not only wholly unrepresentative; it is a complete inversion of what actually happens. It is men who attack women in prison, and now they have this lovely trans woman who's being attacked by TERFs in prison. It's the most disgusting lie. Gender critical bigots.
I did notice there was one little phrase that I don't know the name of all the characters, but the male character, like the properly male character who's on the phone to Sally, says, oh, you know, we can't have you going back into that snake pit. And I wondered if that was a nod to the Mumsnet description as being a nest of vipers.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, okay. That's quite funny if it is. It's a nice touch.
But it's the BBC did a similar thing as well with their well, it wasn't actually a BBC program, but when they had a heartrending story of young people transitioning, it was a male to female. And of course, we know that at that age, the vast majority, at least until recently, there's more young boys transitioning now. But at the time, it was, you know, it was a phenomenon that it was happening to girls.
Yeah, epidemic had shifted to girls, hadn't it?
Yeah, but they can't show that because then they have to show things like unnecessary double mastectomies, and that's not cute and sweet, and it doesn't have burly dads hugging their son in a dress. I mean, it's quite disgraceful the way the media are covering this up. The other thing I wanted to ask is there any? Do you think in the future? I mean, we know that Stonewall have been misrepresenting the Equalities Act to institutions all over the UK. Is there any legal action that can be taken against Stonewall? Can they be challenged in any way?
That I don't know. You need to ask a barrister about that.
Oh, okay.
It'd be nice to think that it could happen.
I just think it all begins and ends at their door. I just think it begins. I really think that I hope that someone is preparing a legal challenge, because I think that's the thing. As you know, all the great successes over here in the UK have happened in court. You know, and it's just a shame that this one is a little bump in the road. But I do think it's only temporary. As you say, that judge said some interesting and significant things. Now,
as someone on Mumsnet said, you couldn't buy this sort of publicity.
Right. Yes.
Really.
Yes. Yeah. Good.
You know,
even though the Guardian probably ignored the story. But listen, you mentioned writing to our MPs. I've already written to Clive Lewis about this. He's my local, and he's just completely ignored me. But what else can people do? There's a crowdfunder as well, isn't there?
There's a kind of. Can I just get one quick point in before something to backtrack a bit? The judicial review, the judgment, it also referred to evidence which demonstrates that the Ministry of Justice is perfectly capable of meeting the legitimate needs of this group of male prisoners within the male estate. So there, as at 2019, there were 129 male prisoners who identify as transgender held in the male estate. We know that the male canteen, which is the list of items that prisoners are able to buy, includes items that would be required by this population.
Right.
Presumably, the safety and security of these 129 prisoners can be met in the male estate, and presumably the Ministry of Justice is clear that if you wish to express a different gender identity, that you should be allowed to do so. So presumably that is also available to this group of male prisoners within the male estate. So if the MOJ can do it for 129 in the male estate, why does any male prisoner need to be housed with women?
Yeah.
They don't.
Yeah. No.
They're making it work. The MOJ is making it work in the male estate. So make it work in the male estate for all of them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Seems quite easy. Yeah.
So go on. What can we do?
Yes. So write to your MP, please. Also, as you mentioned, we do have a crowdfunder. When we started, I mean, I'm saying we in the sort of like the royal we sense of the word. When I started Keep Prison Single Sex back in June last year, I had no idea where it was going to go. You know, it was me and a Twitter account that I didn't really know how to use, and a few boxes of stickers, and just doing bits and pieces. And, you know, it's grown. You know, we've got our group of MPs and peers that we're in contact with who are active. And some of that is behind the scenes. Some of that is more publicly through asking written questions. We've been consulted on policy. You know, we're doing stuff and we're making an impact, which is amazing. Yeah. And we want to go to the next level. We want to take our website, make it more professional. We want to start producing materials. So we've got a crowdfunder. There are many demands on everybody's money. I appreciate that. There's many groups doing excellent work. We're no more worthy than anybody. Everybody's gonna, have their, the particular thing that pulls at their heartstrings, and that is absolutely fine. But if anybody can sling us a few quid,
I would go further. Actually, I would go further. I think it's kind of beholden on us as a society to look after the most vulnerable. I think that this is, as a cause, this is one of the key ones. I think this is up there with the children in the Tavistock and that type of thing. Anyone who's vulnerable, anyone who can't help themselves, anyone who's being forced to, share a space with a man, that's no small potato.
It's not okay, is it?
No, it's not. Okay. And so I hope people do say, I appreciate the modesty, but not false modesty, but the modesty. But it's
it's false. It's genuine. I'm genuinely modest.
It's a very important thing you're doing, Kate, and I'm really glad that you're doing it. We'll put all the links below, and
brilliant.
And please do come back the next time there's any movement, and we'll see what's what. Okay. Always. Lovely to talk to you, Kate.
All right. Thanks.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.